On today's show, the Cavs are just over 2 months away from playing a regular season basketball game. Let's talk about the 10 games we can't wait for on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Be sure to drop us a 5-star review. Help us to grow this show. Also, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching this video, click that thumbs up button for me. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well so you know when the latest Locked On Cavs content is headed your way. If you're not watching this show on YouTube, just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube and do all that stuff that I just mentioned. That is how you can help to grow the show. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right, a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, a number of other stops along the way as well. Today I want to talk about the 10 games that I'm most looking forward to watching the Cleveland Cavaliers play this regular season. No, we're not going to predict what it's going to look like in the playoffs and who they might face off in the first or second round of the playoffs. We are going to talk about the schedule we got last week and the 10 games I most can't wait to see. Before I dive into them, I want to know the games that you guys are most looking forward to. So drop a YouTube comment, the game you absolutely cannot wait to watch the Cavs play this regular season. And I'm going to take these games in chronological order. I'm not saying that I want to watch one of these games more than the other one of these games. This order that I talk about these games will be the order in which they come on the schedule. I'm not ranking them 1 through 10, and I actually cheat a little bit. I have 12. I'm not ranking them as far as what I want to see. We're just going to talk about them in the order that they come up. So the place that I think any list like this has to begin, and it's the place that I'm going to start, is opening night. That would be in Toronto, October 23rd. Like I said in the open, just over 2 months from right now, the Cavs will be playing a basketball game that counts in the standings. Now, we know that they've opened up in Toronto in the past. You think back a couple years ago where they took on the Toronto Raptors opening night. It was Donovan Mitchell's first regular season game in a Cavs uniform. Cavs lost that game. It didn't go that well. Darius Garland had his eyelid lacerated by Gary Trent Jr. Just was all around a bad experience. I thought Donovan looked great that night, but not great memories certainly coming away from that night for Cavs fans. There's no doubt about that. And I do think part of the reason why, other than just, being excited basketball is back, because really, is there a ton of intrigue between what the Cavs look like on the court against the Toronto Raptors this year? No, there's not. I don't predict the Raptors to be very good. Maybe they finish 9th or 10th in the East. Maybe they finish 11th or 12th in the East. They're going to be that type of team. So I don't think that you need to take away a ton of stock from this game specifically, but it means that basketball is back. And ultimately, that's the thing I care about from this night, is that we get a regular season game again. That's what excites me about it. I will say, when looking at the schedule, I think it's important the Cavs get off to a good start. I know on last week's Locked On Cavs, we talked about how there's a rough stretch at the start, but those first 3 games that the Cavs play, they're not all that difficult. And I think winning this game is important for the Cavs, because then you look at their next couple of games where they have Detroit and they have Washington. This is a team that we should be talking about as a team that starts off 3-0 on the season. Winning in Toronto obviously is a necessary thing for that to be the case. If the Cavs are going to get off to a good start, they're going to need to find a way to win north of the border. I know oftentimes they haven't played their best basketball in Toronto, but I do think that we will see a team that is fired up because it's game 1 under a new head coach. A new regular season is here. It's a new beginning. It's a fresh start almost for everybody. Now, conversely, the Raptors aren't a team that's devoid of talent. They also will be fired up. They'll be playing at home, and Toronto does have a great fan base. I think the Cavs fans have learned that over the years. So I do think there are some legitimate things to look forward to here, but ultimately this game lands on this list because it means the regular season is back. Number 2 on my list, this is the first Cavs home game I have on the list. No, we're not talking about the home opener against JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons. We're talking about October 30th. That's right, the day before Halloween, LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers come to town. Now, I feel a little bit bad because the first 2 games that I have earmarked for this list don't have a ton of significance from a pure basketball standpoint. What the Cavs look like versus the Lakers, how the Cavs match up versus the Lakers, not that big of a deal. The Lakers, I don't think, are a team that has handled the end of LeBron's career very, very well. I think the Olympics, he proved, he's still a winning basketball player, and I don't think that roster in Los Angeles is a winning roster. But anytime LeBron plays basketball in Cleveland, I think it's a special moment. I think it's something that's worth watching. If you're able, I think it's something that's worth being at. It is one of my favorite nights of the year because there has never been a player in franchise history for the Cavs that has meant more to this organization, more to this city, and brought more to this city than LeBron James has. And I know he's not playing for the Cavs. I know it's still a little weird at times seeing him in purple and gold, but anytime he's playing in Cleveland, I think he should be honored with the tribute video. I think he should get a standing ovation because he just meant so much to this organization. And truthfully, as we talk about this, we don't know how many more of these nights we have left where he is going to be turning 40 this year. It's actually interesting that the Cavs will be the first team LeBron faces in the NBA as a 40-year-old, provided that he's healthy at the end of December. But this is a night that it's going to be special for Cavs fans. I think it's special for LeBron every time that he's in town. So that's really why I have that one there. It doesn't necessarily matter a ton from a basketball standpoint. These 2 teams aren't going to be feeling each other out for a future playoff matchup. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's cool because LeBron will be in the building. And that matters to me, and I think that matters to a lot of Cavs fans. I know not all Cavs fans, but to some, it does. So moving on to the first game that I'm actually very, very interested in from a basketball standpoint. Now, there are a couple games that could have made the cut that I didn't quite bring in that could have done it. But the next game I have circled is November 13th in Philadelphia against the 76ers. I've got this game there for a few reasons because I do think that this is a game that could be a future playoff matchup. Philly, obviously, this offseason, they went out, they signed Paul George to a deal. That was their biggest addition. One of the biggest, probably the biggest free agency move this entire summer in the NBA, and seeing how the Cavs match up to a bit of a new look Philadelphia 76ers team, I do think is actually a very important thing. I'll be very curious to see how the Cavs are going to defend Philadelphia now that they've got Paul George, in addition to, we know, a former MVP in Joel Embiid and a rising superstar in Tyrese Maxey. That I do think is a very important thing to watch because these 2 teams absolutely could find themselves playing against each other in the playoffs come April, come early May. That is a very distinct possibility. And the Cavs and the Sixers play 3 times this year. They're one of a few teams in the Eastern Conference that the Cavs don't see 4 times. And these games, because of that, the games between Cleveland and Philly, I think are a little bit of heightened importance because you know that there's going to be a head-to-head winner that's going to receive that if there is a tiebreak scenario in which both these teams finish with the same record, because there's only 3 games, well, one of the teams is going to win at least 2 of them. So I do think that the Cavs winning that tiebreaker is something that could be very important when it comes time to determining who gets what seed in the Eastern Conference at the end of the year. So that is something that, this game, it matters just a little bit more than I think some of the other games that are on the schedule early on in the season. The other thing that I'm going to be watching for every time the Cavs and the Sixers match up this year is what does Darius Garland look like in comparison to Tyrese Maxey? Tyrese Maxey obviously had a phenomenal season last year. He signed a max contract extension this offseason with Philadelphia, and he's become a budding superstar. And Darius Garland, since making the All-Star team, really, I shouldn't say that because that's unfair. The year after he made the All-Star team, I thought he was an All-Star caliber player as well. But Darius Garland is coming off of a nightmare of a season, as I have said many times on this here show. He has had some terrible luck last year. I personally would buy stock in Darius Garland. I think he's going to be awesome again this year. I think he's going to get back to a guy that looks like an all-star. Whether or not he makes the all-star team, I don't know. I think it's going to be difficult considering Donovan Mitchell should be a lock for that team. But what does Darius Garland look like in these matchups against Tyrese Maxey is going to be something that I view as a bit of a barometer on Garland's season. Is he going to step up to this challenge? Is he going to look like a guy that's on the same level as Tyrese Maxey, who just got a max contract? Or is Darius Garland going to look like the, 75th player in the NBA as NBA 2K rated him? I'm certainly hoping that he's going to match Tyrese Maxey's level, but that is the thing that is going to stand out about this game to me. Is what does Darius Garland look like? I expect, maybe Joel Embiid's going to be the best player on the floor, and that's fine. And then I would expect Donovan Mitchell to be next. But where does Darius Garland fall in line in this game, in this specific matchup? I think that is something that is very, very much worth watching anytime the Cavs take on the Sixers. Up next, though, I do have another game with the Sixers that is a little bit cheating, plus a playoff rematch. That is an NBA Cup game. We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships. Also, the formula to keep your ride or die alive. If you're a Cavs fan, you've had patience, you've had pride, you've had passion for the team, no doubt. eBay Motors has the same thing for your vehicle. They've got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. These games I'm talking about for the Cavs right now, they need to be playing peak performance for some of them. Maybe not all of them, maybe not the Raptors, maybe not the Lakers, but some of these other ones, if the Cavs want to win these games and look good, they need to be, at peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, all three of them, maybe other things too, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So the next up game that I have for the Cavs here that I'm most excited for, again, these might not be the best games, but I'm excited for a number of these games for different reasons. And I do think that this game that I'm going to talk about now, which is November 19th in Boston against the Celtics, this is a game that is part of the NBA Cup. And I think this is exciting for a number of different reasons. Obviously, the Boston Celtics are the NBA champions. They're going to be introduced before every game at home at TD Garden as the NBA champion Boston Celtics, world champion Boston Celtics. Of course, that's unless Noah Lyles is in attendance. He might take issue with that. And of course, we all have to listen to everything he says because it matters very, very much. But this is a game that I think is an opportunity for the Cavs to make a bit of a statement. I think the Cavs actually have a relatively good chance. I like them as an NBA Cup team because you take a look at what Boston has dealt with this offseason. Yes, they won the title, and that's fantastic, and you wouldn't trade anything for that. But if you're the Celtics, that means it's an abbreviated offseason, while 3 of their 5 most important players all were in the Olympics. And we can make jokes about Jason Tatum not playing a ton for Team USA, but the fact of the matter is he really didn't get an offseason because he was doing that. Like, his offseason is very abbreviated. The same can be said for, even though these guys played much more, Drew Holiday and Derek White. Those guys really get about a 6-week offseason from the time the Olympics end to the time training camp starts. That's something, when you play until June, the middle of June when the Celtics won the title, and then have such an abbreviated offseason on the back end, that can be a difficult thing. It can be a difficult thing, and that's part of the reason why I think the Cavs should be in pretty good shape, despite clearly not being the best team in the group. That's still the Celtics. They've earned that. But the timing of this, I think, matters a lot. So this is their NBA Cup game, and I think it's a really cool game to look forward to. Plus, Boston not going to have Kristaps Porzingis available for this game. He is someone that is, if he's back in January, I think that's a pretty big win for the Celtics after he had to have off-season surgery following the finals. So the Cavs are going to be seeing a lesser Boston team, but it also gives them an opportunity, I think, to make a statement. And I think that statement, I can't predict what the Cavs are going to look like on November 19th in terms of health, but in this world, I like to think that they've stayed healthy. That statement can be, if we were healthy, we might not have won that series against you. This is the Cavs speaking, not me. We might not have won that series against you, Boston, but that series would have looked a little bit different than a 5-game gentleman's sweep. I think that's the kind of statement the Cavs can be making here, that if things go a little bit different, not saying the Cavs win that series, I definitely don't believe they win that series, but could that series have gone 6 games? I think so. I don't see a reason why it couldn't have made it 6 games, and I think that this could be just a little bit of an opportunity to say that out loud, to make that statement on the parquet, if you will. And then, of course, Boston is a difficult environment to play in at times, and I think seeing the Cavs be tested in that kind of environment is a really cool thing. All right, game number 5 is actually 2 games, and it is December 20th and December 21st. December 20th, a game at home against the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm not super high on the Bucks, but they are a divisional opponent that the Cavs will see 4 times. They are a team that should be competing for home court. I think they're a little bit older, and I don't know how much you can count on them when 3 of their key players in Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton are all guys that are on the wrong side of 30, just like myself, who have dealt with some significant injuries over the last several years. Obviously, Giannis might still be the best player in the Eastern Conference, but I just don't think the rest of that roster is where it needs to be. I think that the Cavs should be a team that has a better regular season than the Milwaukee Bucks do, but I wonder what's it going to look like come playoff time. And that's not to say the Bucks are going to stink, because I don't believe that to be true. I would bet on the Cavs winning more games in the regular season than the Bucks, but this is another scenario. I talked about this with Philly a little bit earlier, that winning the tiebreaker is something that very much could matter. And this is the first opportunity to make a bit of a statement. And then this also is the first game of a back-to-back. So December 20th, they're at home against Milwaukee. December 21st, they're at home against Philly. Everything I said about Philly earlier on still applies to this game, but it's even a bigger test because the Cavs will have a game that matters, and it matters significantly the night before at home. I think this is probably the toughest back-to-back for the Cavs just as far as actual opponents go. I don't know that there's a tougher back-to-back than Milwaukee and Philly. Luckily for the Cavs, this is one of 3 back-to-backs on their schedule that the Cavs don't have to travel for, that both of these games are in Cleveland inside Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So that is a bit of a boost for Cleveland if they want to give their best shot in back-to-back games against 2 potential Eastern Conference contenders. Game number 6, that was game number 5, even though it was 5 and 6. Game number 6, we're going to go out west. It is the end of the first Cavs West Coast trip of the year. This game, January 3rd in Dallas against the Mavericks. So a couple reasons why I'm very excited for this game. One, anytime you go against, and I already talked about this with Boston, anytime you go against a team that was in the finals, it's a bit of a test. The stakes just a little bit more heightened. The Cavs had certainly a great win in Dallas last year where they had that massive comeback. That is something that maybe adds a little bit of spice. But the thing, of course, you need to mention anytime the Cavs are in Dallas taking on the Mavericks right now is it's a rematch against old friend Kyrie Irving, who has absolutely found his footing and been a fantastic basketball player for the Mavericks since he was traded to Dallas a couple years ago at this point. So that is something I'm definitely looking forward to. And this is the final game of a 4-game West Coast road trip. What the Cavs look like at the end of their first West Coast road trip is something that I'm very curious to see. These road trips are not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, Dallas is not on the West Coast, but the Cavs will be out west prior to this. They'll be in Los Angeles. I believe they'll be in Golden State too. What they look like after that swing going to Dallas, and I think that trip actually starts in Denver. So it's not an easy trip by any stretch. What they look like at the end of it, I think could be pretty telling about where this team is at. So that is one of the reasons why I'm very, very excited to see what that game in particular looks like. Moving on to game number 7, February 21st, the Cavs play host to the New York Knicks. Now, the Cavs do play the Knicks earlier on in the season. I believe it's within the first 7 days of the NBA season starting. They will be in New York against the Knicks. But this is a game It's right after the All-Star break. It's the Cavs' first game back from the All-Star break. It's game number 2 of a back-to-back. The first game of the back-to-back, oddly enough, is in New York, in Brooklyn against the Nets. And then they will come home to Cleveland, take on the Knicks. It is actually the only Friday night home game the Cavs have the entire second half of the season. They play every Friday night after the All-Star break. Every Friday night they have a game. This is the only one of them that will be inside Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Just something to think about. It's a little weird. It's a schedule quirk. It's not something I'm not thrilled about. I'm sure you're not thrilled about either. But the Knicks, they're very good. They're a team that the Cavs could be competing with in terms of seeding in the Eastern Conference. Maybe New York projected to be a little bit better than the Cavs. But this is a Knicks team that should be really good. How the Cavs match up against them, I think, is very important because these two teams very well could be squaring off in the playoffs, 2 months after this game is played. They could be in Madison Square Garden for game 1 of another series, and that is something that does matter. They, like I said, they play early on in the season, and then they don't play again until late in the season. And that is something that what the Knicks look like at the time, what the Cavs look like at this time, this could be a measuring stick game. And then, of course, anytime it's Donovan Mitchell versus Jalen Brunson, it's going to be a bit of a show. These two have had some great battles against each other, both when they've been on the Cavs and Knicks respectively, when Donovan was in Utah and when Jalen was in Dallas. And Brunson has gotten the better of Mitchell quite often. And whether or not that keeps up, I don't know. But anytime these two do match up, it has been, for the most part, a pretty good matchup. It's been a fun matchup to watch. Up next, I've got another playoff rematch that I want to talk about. Plus, how the way the schedule ends for the Cavs is something that is absolutely worth watching. We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel quite a bit because, well, duh, they are America's number one sportsbook. Well, today we've got something a little bit different for you, and that is now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, listen up, this is important. All FanDuel customers can bet $5, and if you bet $5, you get a free 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. The NFL season is going to be here before you know it. I mean, we are less than a month away from regular season games. We've got preseason games that don't matter, but you can still bet on with FanDuel anyways, like my Cleveland Browns going to be in Seattle this weekend taking on the Seahawks for a 10 o'clock kickoff on Saturday night, which is ridiculous for a preseason game. But if you want to place a little wager, FanDuel is the place to go for that. And if you do it, if it's $5, you're going to be a very happy FanDuel customer because, like I said, FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. I've got NFL Sunday Ticket. It's awesome. I don't know how people go without this. I truly don't. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. Plus, you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to download America's number one sportsbook today. A few more games that I need to talk about here, but I also need to remind you that thank you again for making Lock On Cavs your first listen today and every day. I very much appreciate you if you are listening every day to Locked On Cavs, especially during this offseason. I truly can't wait for basketball to start so we can start talking about some real things on the court that I'm very much excited for with this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Now, for your second listen of the day, go on and enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast because there's no off season in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and as entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, game number 8 that I'm excited for this season for the Cavs, March 16th at home against the Orlando Magic. Obviously, it's a playoff rematch. The Cavs and the Magic had a thrilling 7-game series that ended with the Cavs winning Game 7, coming back from as many as 18 points down at home against the Magic in that Game 7. How much has Orlando improved from last year to this year? They added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope this offseason. That was their big move. They're a team that I think rightfully so is counting on some significant internal development, primarily from Paolo Banchero, who I think is going to grow into one of the best players in the NBA. Very young guy still growing, still maturing, still developing. What does this Magic team look like in mid-March? Are they a team that has taken a big step forward? Are they a team that takes a bit of a step back after experiencing some semblance of success? I could see it going either way. I really could. And this also could be a game that, as I've mentioned with a few other ones, matters as far as seeding goes in the Eastern Conference. This could be a game that if the Cavs win, they clinch a tiebreaker over the Magic. Or if the Cavs win, they really give themselves a leg up to be maybe the third or the fourth seed in the conference. And who's the best player on the floor going to be in this game? Is it going to be Paolo Banchero, who looks like a budding NBA superstar? Or is it going to be Donovan Mitchell, who I think is already a superstar? I think that is something that'll be fun to watch. Up next, March 27th at home against the San Antonio Spurs. This is a game that, for this late in the season, might not have playoff implication. I don't think the Spurs are going to be competing for a playoff spot in the West. I think they'll be better than they were last year. But this will, of course, be the first glimpse the Cavs get at Victor Wembanyama in year number 2. They don't play until this date. The Cavs go to San Antonio roughly a week after this game, maybe 10 days after this game. The Cavs will be in San Antonio taking on the Spurs for their second of 2 matchups. But getting to watch the guy who I think is the future face of the NBA in Cleveland, you can't pass that up. I think that is something that should be talked about when you're breaking down the 10 games you're most excited for. I can't lie. I'm excited to see what Victor Wembanyama looks like in person. Last year, when he was in Cleveland for the first time, I was pretty blown away just by how tall this guy was. And he is going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be the best player in the NBA at a certain point if he stays healthy. I don't know when that'll be. Heck, maybe it's by March 27th. Maybe that's what we're watching. So I'm very excited for that. And then number 10 is, again, a little bit of cheating. It's actually games 11 and 12 that I'm most excited for. It is April 10th. The Cavs are in Indiana against the Pacers. And then April 11th, they're at Madison Square Garden taking on the New York Knicks. Again, a little bit of cheating. What does Indiana look like? I sort of am betting on them taking a bit of a step back. I know they were a conference finalist last year, but I kind of think they were a little bit of a fake conference finalist, the way the Atlanta Hawks were in 2021, where they made the conference finals. But does anyone really believe in this team as the second best team in the Eastern Conference? I certainly don't. I doubt you do. But this is a game that the Cavs could need to win. They could need to win this game to clinch home court advantage. It could be a game that matters quite a bit. The same can be said, minus, I do view the Knicks as a contender, as a real contender in the Eastern Conference. But in terms of importance, the same can be said about the Cavs taking on the Knicks in their second to last regular season game. Having to travel from Indiana to New York for a back-to-back is a bit of a tough draw the last weekend of the season. Is this going to be a must-win situation for the Cavs? It certainly could be. I don't know if it will or not for sure, but it is one that I think that this back-to-back has a ton of intrigue. I really do think that. If there's a game that you're excited for that I missed, be sure to drop it in the comments. Or you can always tweet at me at RealDCunningham. That's at RealDCunningham. But drop a comment right here on YouTube if you're watching. If you're listening via podcast, give us a 5-star review. Make sure you are subscribed. Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. If you're watching on YouTube, if you haven't clicked that like button yet, click that like button for me. Help us grow the show. Also, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell as well. Help us make Locked On Cavs as big as we can make it so I can bring you guys the best content available. I will be back tomorrow. We've got some awards predictions, previews coming up. Going to talk about that as we get closer and closer to the NBA season. But thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen.